Hi, listeners. This is Matt. You're going to hear from our host, Conor, in a moment, but I just wanted to add this disclaimer at the top of the show to say that we are aware that Arden had two black eyes in the episode, as keenly-eyed viewers are surely going to notice. However, we never got around to discussing it, and I just wanted those listeners to be reassured that Arden was fine at the time, back in October when we recorded, and she is still fine now. There is no ongoing thing to worry about with Arden. She just had an unfortunate encounter with her counter, which caused one black eye and then spread to the other through a condition that I only just learned about by witnessing this happen to Arden, called periorbital ecchymosis, which you all can look up on your own. Needless to say, we had many other interesting things to discuss, and I hope you enjoy this final episode of mine. And hopefully the show will continue on soon. But with that spoiler and disclaimer out of the way, I will turn it over to Conor. And it's so cool that they let me sit in Rob's chair for this one. I don't even work here anymore. It's great.
Hello, listeners. We're here with Matt Reardon for another episode of the 80K Retreat podcast, where we discuss various retreats from the world, from responsibilities, from daily work hours, from London. But specifically, we're going to talk about Matt and his retreats. Matt, how's it going?
It's going all right.
Mm-hmm.
You've prefaced me to be thinking about retreats. And you're in the chair that I'm usually in.
Oh, yeah.
Which speaks to the first retreat, which might be most relevant for listeners, which is that I'm retreating from this podcast.
Yeah.
And maybe Conor will take over from Halifax, Canada.
Yeah. There's a way.
There is a way. There's a way to do many things.
I mean, podcasts are pretty remote friendly.
Yeah.
That's true. But the brand of this one has been...
That's true. It's in the office.
Yeah.
Right.
On surveys, people say that matters to them when they watch this.
Yeah. Is that right? Or is that a joke? I'm sorry. I didn't know how intense you were with the user research, Matt.
Well, anyway, we should introduce ourselves. I'm Conor. Think of me as Matt. This is Matt. Think of him as...
Conor from 2 episodes ago.
This is Arden.
Hi. I'm just myself.
Yeah. What's there else to say? We're all at 80,000 hours for a few weeks more, and some of us are at 80,000 hours for longer than that.
Yeah, so we're all at 80,000 hours physically for a few more weeks.
Yes.
Right.
Well, actually, wait. I'm the only one who's actually here for a few more weeks. You guys
No,
are
I'm
both
here for
just
2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm here for
1 more
days. Yes.
Okay. Nice. So consistent with the theme of this show that I've been running kind of all year, now not only is the guest leaving London, but every participant is on the verge of leaving London.
That's right.
Yeah. And the news for me and like why Conor is sitting in the chair is that I've given these like kind of 3 big updates to my 80K colleagues over the last 4 weeks. My first update was I am moving to the United States in early 2025. Maybe DC, maybe the Bay. Kind of classic places for folks like us to go. A couple weeks later, I said, I'm moving to Korea before the US. So both will happen. But moving to Korea much more urgently in about 2 weeks from the time of recording here in early October.
For a while.
And then...
A few months, right?
For 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then the third update came just last week at the retreat, which is I'm also formally leaving 80K. And I am going to run the programs team at the Institute for Law and AI. We're hoping that people like our listeners will come to know it as Law AI.
I already think of it as Law AI.
Is that news to you, Arden?
Yes, it is news.
I've been calling it Law AI all week.
I thought you were just forgetting one of the words in between.
It's like the Law AI thing. That's where I'm going.
Lie. You don't worry about all that vowel?
Lie.
Lie.
Over time, it'll become...
Yeah.
Lie.
Our hope is that it will make people think of the Gilmore Girls.
Right. Or lies. Which I think could work for you.
Being lawyers. Is that a lawyer joke you just made?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. Are you stoked?
No.
Cut.
I really thought we were going to talk about how excited you were about your new role.
I endorse my new role.
Okay.
Uh,
Which is what's important.
which is as close as I ever get to stoked. That was more of a kind of Matt personality. Where's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ceiling on stokedness? It's like below the point at which
But
you would say
stoked,
stoked.
but stoked for Matt?
Yeah, relative to a Matt baseline.
Okay.
Right. If we normalized this to other people, then we'd say you're stoked.
Yeah.
That's great. What are you going to be doing? Can you tell the audience? I don't know. Sorry, you're the host. Matt?
We're co-hosts.
My vision for the show,
Yeah.
it's now Connor's show, or maybe someone else's show.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
my original vision was like anyone can ask any question. We just sort of proceed. Right. So yeah, running programs. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Programs. Those could be anything.
It sounds like the whole thing.
Yeah, and I kind of, I mean, it's funny, like getting a job at a new org that's like starting up and growing really fast. There's lots that needs to get done. And so like exactly where the boundaries are kind of unclear. But in the conversations I've been having with my future colleagues, it does seem like, I will kind of be like the in-house ADK of law AI, i.e. like just thinking about the talent landscape, like who's out there, who do we want to engage, what do we want them to do, what do we want them to know, and what are the ways we can get them to do that? So I think a lot of it is going to be, just literally informational stuff. Just like, are there talks, conferences, summits, meetings, whatever that we can like put on, get lots of people in the room, get lots of relevant perspectives, just like, educate people in a sense. And then another function is sort of like recruiting. So we're going to have these like tracks for different researchers, seasonal fellows, winter fellows, summer fellows, and annual fellows, who we like pay to like be researchers and do researchers with us and for us for those amounts of time, and hopefully scaling up to maybe we can hire them full time and things like that. And like I need to go and find those people in the world and get them to the place where they can hit the ground running for their seasonal or annual fellowship or whatever.
Cool. So these are mostly people who are lawyers that you're trying to get to do legal research for helping with AI governance. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say lawyers and law students are like the vast majority of folks. I think like other sort of adjacent academics might be on the table as well.
Got it. Can you give an example of like what sorts of, like what's the legal research that's actually useful for AI governance?
Yeah, so the way that I sort of frame this is like, you have like really big picture academic people thinking about like, what should society do? What should the rules be around AI and things like that? Just from a, like, what do we want to get done? What do we want to see happen perspective? So, listeners might know various things like if-then frameworks, responsible scaling policies. There should be like some lines, that we draw around like what AI models are capable of and how worried we should be about that and what sorts of like consequences should follow from like observing these lines or crossing these lines or whatever. And good. That's a good big picture framework of a policy or whatever. Yeah. And I think it is the case with just all policy. The place where lawyers come in is like, all right, you've got an idea, you know roughly what you want. You used all these words in describing the thing that you want. Let's take a close look at those and think about how someone in the world who like wouldn't be pleased either with what you want or with what the words might imply would interpret these things and challenge them, given the kind of like other law that exists out there. And think really, really carefully about, like changing those words and phrasings to like actually get you the outcome you want, as opposed to just like roughly scoping it and throwing it out there.
Right.
So most of this is about making precise, defensible, solid, usable in the real world in a maybe possibly somewhat hostile environment, the ideas that people who are doing more big picture AI governance research are coming up with.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's a few focus areas, just like substantively, like compute governance, international agreements, interesting like law-abiding AI kind of project, and then also liability, which I think is like kind of like feels like double law or something, like because
double law.
Law about law.
Yeah, because and I mean, I'm mostly referring to like the idea of liability for harms and accidents and stuff, just like goes all the way back to like the common law. It was like judge written like 500 years ago. It's not like some, policy template we have from the 50s.
Are we going to talk about SB 1047 on this podcast?
Deep law, if you want to.
Okay, because it feels a little bit like, it was just recently vetoed, and here we are talking about liability and AI and the importance of legal frameworks. And I guess I am kind of curious what you think.
Yeah. We this podcast did have a news section at one point, right?
Yeah.
This could be the news thing.
All right. Here's some news from 3 months ago, whenever this podcast gets released. It was an inherent problem with the news section.
Right.
That it took me so long to turn episodes around. So no, SB 1047. Yeah, as I like read it and listened to the nice podcast that Louisa put out with Nathan Calvin. Yeah, to my like lawyerly ear or whatever, did seem to be like just clarifying this idea that like, hey, like these new models that you're training and making and releasing to the world like have the potential to cause harm. We need to make it very clear that you are going to be liable for that harm. And yeah, there's this interesting tension, and I think Nathan can speak to it better than me in his conversation with Louisa. We're like, well, that's just the basic thing that exists in the world.
Yeah.
If you counterfactually like cause some harm, to someone, like you should compensate them. That's like the basic principle of tort law. And we already have that. And this is like something that people use to object to the bill. And it is a worry I have about the fact that the bill failed. Sort of because a thing that happens in law is like, courts and judges, in our system of government, I often talk about law like it's sort of advanced civics or something like that. The courts generally frame themselves in the way they interpret things as like very subservient to the legislature. Like they're the elected ones. They're the ones whose job it is to pass laws. Our job is just to interpret their intention and what they meant.
Right.
And yeah, my sense with SB 1047 was like, you have this thing in tech. And like most of tech is just like these big online media companies that we know about. And they have Section 230, which says like, all right, people are going to be posting and using these platforms for all kinds of things that maybe could do bad things or whatever. And the platforms overall seem like they're going to be beneficial to society, even though they're going to enable people to do things they could have done with other platforms. So we're going to kind of like just like take away their liability.
Or they couldn't have done with other platforms, you mean? You said they're going to enable people to do things they could have done with other platforms.
Right. And I did mean to say that, but maybe it calls for some clarification, which is to say like with great effort, you could have like through newspapers and radio done what you do on Facebook.
Okay.
But like Facebook's value is inherently because it way lowers the cost of like doing those kinds of things, which means you're going to get a lot more of them.
Yeah.
And I think like when Section 230 passed, the legislature's judgment was like, oh wow, lowering that cost for so many people in such a big way is so societally valuable that we wouldn't want like our standard like methods of liability to like hinder that great value. So let's like make sure that the platform makers are not going to be responsible for what individuals use the platform for. And there's this debate. Is AI like social media, like older tech stuff, or is it like a new thing that is like different and much more precise as a tool? Or what?
Or will it be in the future?
Right. And so yeah, my sense is like the kind of like profit-driven tech world is like Section 230 is great. We got to build all these platforms. We didn't have liability. AI is just like that. Let's just like assume those are the rules. And in fact, this is just ambiguous. Is this a new thing? Is it not? And like I should clarify for listeners, I really don't know the intricacies of Section 230 and how much it covers or how much it doesn't or what the language is. But there's this notion out there in tech that's like, we're not liable for stuff for the ways that users use our products.
And is that because they're like, this does just enable people to do things they could have done anyway more efficiently? Is that how key is that to the argument?
I'm really unsure.
Okay.
Maybe not very. I think like, interesting. I mean, this is sort of like how the legal process works. I'm sure there were debates at the time that touched on that kind of thing when Section 230 was passed.
And even in this framework, there's like ongoing debate about some liability, right? Like I've seen people try to ding Facebook for like inciting things on the platform. So what's that? Is that?
Yeah,
something?
I mean, the idea is like you should say like there's some outer bound here of like if the platform was like so counterfactually enabling of like some really, really big harm, really disproportionately to what you could have done with radio or newspaper. Like maybe this is outside the bounds. And like maybe the important legal point is just like everything is in the words in the statute that like passed and how those words are interpreted. And so I don't actually know the words in Section 230. They could be as sweeping as like, tech people claim they are, and like maybe that question implies they are. But they could be more circumspect. And my notion is like, that like usually you can think of some hypothetical scenario where like, clearly you've like violated the spirit of the law to such a great extent that the words won't even allow for it, even if the words themselves are like quite sweeping. So yeah, we're getting pretty deep into legal weeds. I think my worry.
I am interested, but I also understand. Yeah.
Maybe to like sum up the kind of worry is like, okay, so when something goes wrong with AI, there's always this question of like, all right, like how causally distant are the AI model builders from the users? Because there's this discussion of like, oh, well, maybe you open source it, maybe someone fine tunes it, makes it new, and there's like, it changes hands like 4 times before the bad actor actually gets it and uses it for something bad. And courts are going to say like, causally attenuated things, like how should we interpret these? And they might take the failure of SB 1047 to pass as an indication that the legislature said, those causal links need to be relatively tight.
Right.
And so in cases where they're relatively loose, we should interpret this in favor of model developers.
So are you concerned that if SB 1047 had never been put forward, courts might have interpreted 237? What is it?
230.
230
Yeah.
In a more like, but courts might have there might have been greater liability than there will be now that it has been put forward and failed?
Yes, it doesn't turn on 230. 230 is more like how the tech world interprets it.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Put it that aside. Yeah. Interesting. I think they might try again though, right?
Oh, yeah, I certainly hope they do.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that can be, cured that way. And I think it's like not a super load-bearing, piece of evidence, but it's like definitely something that like lawyers for the AI companies will point to and say like, hey, look, the legislature considered this question and they said that they didn't like it. Well, the legislature liked it, but the governor didn't. And that's the process. And the process is what's important.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Great news section. I want to bring it back to you.
I just like appreciated the legal analysis. Can I ask one more thing?
Of course you can.
Okay. So you started this by Connor asked, "Isn't this?" Or somebody introduced the idea that maybe this is already covered in the law or something like that, and this is like making it more precise. I guess I am interested in the broader question, which. I am interested in the broader question. As something of a conservative, I'm under the impression that maybe conservatives don't like making like more laws on more laws on more laws on more laws to like make things like more and more precise or like clarify the thing. Can you talk about why that is and why my sense is that you wish that SB 1047 had passed? Why you don't feel that way in this case?
Sure. So yeah, I mean the conservative impulse is to say that like. Yeah, I think it's not necessarily conservative, though it does overlap with that. It's more of like the progress studies kind of impulse, which says that like if you look at developed societies, we see like productivity kind of like slowing down, productivity growth slowing down a bunch. And like, why might this be? And like one reason is like we've noticed all these cases where like bad things happen. Like you could write a news headline. I mean, classically, like a super classic example is like, little girl like fell onto the railroad tracks and the train ran her over or whatever. Oh, if only we had like higher fences or gates or something, that wouldn't have happened. Now, this is in fact like a 1 in 10 million event that happened, but it was like newsworthy and people cared and said there ought to be law. And so now legislatures across the whole country and whatever country it is say like every rail crossing anywhere has to have these big huge gates in front of it. And they have to be up to code, and they have to be so high and so wide and so sturdy and whatever. And you can write like 10 pages of law about like the fences on the rail because of this one story, right? And just like there are thousands of stories in this category, and then thousands of these rules, and then it takes you years and years and years to just build a train station so people can get where they're going, which is like fundamental to society.
Sorry, I actually had a slightly I feel like I was trying to point to something slightly more specific, which is like. When there are new laws that are seeking to clarify old laws, as opposed to adding on top something that's clearly additional, I guess I had this sense that that's also something that is not like just like adding many pages of like clarifications and specifications is something that like I get the sense that conservatives in the US are like, that is just going to make things maybe too inflexible, maybe it's just not necessary, requires there to be like more government to be bigger in order to interpret all that. I don't know what it is. I was curious about that. Because SB 1047, it sounded like you were thinking of it as a clarification of existing law. And some people will be like, you don't need to clarify it. The law's already there. Or let the courts interpret it, or whatever it is, or let it stay flexible in some ways. And I was curious if you could talk about that as an impulse.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of like a rare case that isn't the central case that people are thinking of when they have this intuition. But people can lean on this intuition to say it's bad. And I mean, one rationale they might have is just to say like, okay, you say you're clarifying the law, but you aren't actually repealing the old law and replacing it with something simple and smoother. You're actually just like adding another law on top of it. And so like in the future, some like government agency or whatever is going to look and say, hey, both these laws are on the books. And sure, like maybe the intent of this like second law was to clarify it, but really like an easy interpretation for us who want to like expand our departments and like have bigger salaries and more staff, like is to say like, hey, both are in place. We should just like double down and do more. And so you don't want to run that risk. And so like you hear a lot of like conservative people saying like, well, we can pass new laws, sure, but it should be 2 old laws out, 1 new law in, or something like that. This is like a slogan that you hear sometimes, and like I think maybe that's like the intellectually defensible, like justification for like, yeah, this view.
Okay.
And you're sympathetic to this in most cases.
Yeah.
Right, but not this. Or how much sympathy for this case?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think this like speaks to the whole broader debate about AI safety and catastrophic risk and stuff like that, which is to say like, most people who are worried about like catastrophic AI risk sort of like believe in the power of technology to like change the world. And like most technologies are just like very, very well controlled by the people who built them and well intentioned towards like making the world better, making something more efficient, more convenient for its users. And so like, yeah, we'd often want to say like, well, don't hinder that process, don't slow that process down. That's what has like caused so many gains in wealth and health and like all these things that we care about. And yeah, we just make an exception for this like AI case because it is different in this like almost unique way where it's like, well, actually, this thing can be incredibly potent and it almost stands as like a unique kind of technology that like there are special reasons to think we both can't control and that the consequences of failing to control it are truly like catastrophic. Like, the SB 1047, set the threshold at 500 million. Most people said that was too low because like the things we're actually worried about are like many billions, many trillions
In damages.
In damages like that. And I think when the stakes become that high, some light touch regulation just like makes enough sense.
Cool. Okay.
Good pitch.
Thank you.
I'm sold.
Great. Other things.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to you leaving because, it hurts my heart and I want to hear the pitch. Why are you abandoning me? Us.
This is really about Conor, guys. Yeah. So first I just want to say that it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. And I guess the thing pushing in the leaving direction was some kind of like urgency about leveling up. About like, I need to like take on a bigger challenge and I need to like do really well at it and have that be really legible in part so I can just like be trusted to go and do more and bigger things in the world. This is a lot of like, it rhymes with the thing that I like most often advise people to do.
I was about to say, are you using this as an opportunity to give the listeners some career advice?
Yeah, which is like, yeah, I think like our whole model is kind of like, hey, if you have like good values and good perspectives that were arrived at by a good process, you should go out there and like make that clear to lots of people and make it compelling to lots of people and like build concrete projects and programs that that demonstrate the value of your perspective and what interventions you think are valuable in the world, so that you can actually grow the number of people who do this in a big way and grow the funding for it. Because like one thing I tell people is like, people like
also so that you can sometimes do just object level useful things, right?
Sure.
Okay. I just meant, yeah.
No, it's not.
People are sensitive about the sort of, that I don't want people to think this is a pyramid scheme.
The way that I have framed it is a very meta framing because I do think of myself as a very meta person.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like very, very good to flag that. But yeah, I think the thing that I wanted to point to is like, yeah, I mean, I'm saying all this on a background of like, we are this like small group of people who really care about this thing that seems incredibly important and very stakesy to us. And yeah, like why the need to level up? Why don't you just like slot in where you're good? Because I think I'm like good here and I've slotted in well here, but I have like limited capacity to level up. And why the urgency? Why is it so important to level up? And I think because like, we were just talking about like AI safety and the law and like how it interacts with all of society. And it's like, before society is going to like let you influence it in big ways, like you need to establish a lot of credibility. You need to like do great things that are very legible to lots of people. And so this is like, yeah, both like, government stakeholders, policymakers, decision makers, and things like that. And like, potential funders and new collaborators. And I think that like actually just going out and building good things, and the conflict that I'm speaking to that advisees often have is like classic questions. Like, should I earn to give or should I do direct work? And oftentimes I want to say like, hey, if you're really ambitious and you're really serious, direct work like kind of strictly dominates earning to give, in the sense that if you build a project or a system or an organization to such a degree of excellence, like people will notice this and fund it. People who have more money than you could hope to earn elsewhere. And indeed, like, I don't know, this is my story for like where OpenPhil came from. Just like, GiveWell was amazing. It was like the best advice for the most important question. And like you had this big donor who recognized it. Like Holden and Ellie Hessenfeld could have gone off and like worked at Bridgewater their whole careers and even like worked their way up to near the top, and they wouldn't have done like a meaningful fraction of like what OpenPhil is now able to do because they built GiveWell so well and it was so legible and so impressive. And so yeah, I think like I want to get myself in a position where I can do that, and I can get us to the point where like things like SB 1047 getting vetoed don't happen, because like this is just like a very like serious, credible, accomplished, well-supported group of people who are introducing this perspective to the world.
Law AI in particular, or do you mean like just like you want to make this true of the people who are concerned about this? And something more general. I have two questions, both about Oh God, is me not being able to say words going to become a theme?
Universality.
No, universability.
Universalizability
of your of your spiel there. So you're an advisor. You talk to lots of people. They're often like very talented, but like I guess I am. You said it strictly dominates earning to give to do direct work, and you talked about building this thing. Like, is this some advice that you would actually give everyone who meets a certain bar of like talented, altruistic, thoughtful? You would think really they should all be going for this, or is that just like for some subset in which you fall?
Yeah, well, I think it's unclear whether I fall in the subset.
Got it.
And and there is like some bar at which you start giving this advice.
But you would
like,
give this advice to yourself.
It's quite a high bar. I would give this advice to the aspirational version of myself.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Good. Yeah.
I really don't know whether this will pan out in the ambitious model that I have. But the point is like, I endorse trying.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to give that advice to advisees. I mean, we talked about this with Dwarkish, right? You want to be sometimes being like, try the thing, even if it might not work.
Yeah. I mean, you just want to like seriously like use the evidence you have and make a good decision.
Yeah.
And like my track record so far, I would say is like mixed in terms of whether it like really predicts that I'll be able to nail this. But because it's mixed, I should like kind of aim for the high upside, even though there's a lot of risk of like it not working out and me kind of just wishing that I had kept humming along, giving solid advice to the good people who come to us for calls.
Do you feel like you need to de-rust on anything to do well here?
Yes. Despite the legal analysis earlier, I have been kind of out of the law game, like in a quite dedicated way for like more than 3 years now. And so I feel like picking up all the parlance, all the ways of thinking, all the updates, all the things like just happening in the legal community, because like the legal community is its own kind of beast, and has its own sorts of like comms and status games that people play, and I was just like very, very in tune to that stuff as a lawyer would be. And I've just like vanished from that world, and I just vaguely remember the ins and outs of like how to do law school is what I feel like I have left over. Maybe that's like selling myself short, but
I thought you did pretty well on my spontaneous SB 1047 questioning. Okay, actually, yeah, that reminds me.
You had another question.
Well, I do have another question about the career advice, but this whole like be in touch with the law stuff. Yeah, do you have any idea what's going on in like the law world of what's the question I have right now? Like, does the legal community go through like concerns and trends and things that they're anxious about and things that they're excited about? And if so, do you know what any of those are right now?
So no to the latter question, but I think one way it's an interesting question. I'll foreground it this way, because I was thinking about this a little bit, thinking about myself and the show and where I'm going and stuff like that. I think we're used to this like EA community.
Well, I was going to ask if it has some similarity with that or if it's totally different.
Right. And I think it is mostly totally different. in
Much bigger.
in two ways with one explanation.
Professionalized.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my basic sense is like the EA community is like 12 years old, something like that. And it's, I don't know how you count, 5 to 15,000 people, something like that, who are like kind of really engaged. So it's like very new, very changing, and in fact, like focused on things that change by nature.
Yeah.
The legal profession has kind of had its norms and ideas, like even, I'm thinking about the US, but I think this like probably extends to Great Britain and Canada and stuff like that. Yeah, all those things were established in like the early 19th century. And surprisingly little has changed about the way business is done. And then the other thing is, yes, it is way bigger. And the common cause is much broader, i.e. just like, we want to understand what laws are being produced and what they mean. And those laws just run the gamut of like everything that you can imagine being a societal concern.
Would you say that is broader than what the EA community is trying to do, which is do good as effectively as possible, which it can run the gamut of any cause area and intervention?
The could is doing a lot of work there.
Right.
I would say the legal community just does value and care about like anything that is a law. Like I was a patent litigator. But I could definitely go to like a constitutional lawyer or an immigration lawyer, and in the norms of the legal community say like, oh, I really respect your work. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think EA's emphasis on prioritization says that like, sure, we start with like the whole world open to us, but we narrow as quickly as we can to get to the really important stuff.
Yeah.
And then we focus deeply on that.
I disrespect your work. I don't think it's interesting. Please do something better.
Totes.
No. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, actually, sorry. I make this joke, but like, I do think the EA community has tried to be a pluralistic community that wants to like, have prioritization, but also not dogmatism about what is most pressing and most important, and have people have respect for other people's views on what they should be working on.
Yeah, I do think if we were as big as the legal community, our bar for causes would lower. We would get people spread across more things, but we still wouldn't cover the like huge amount of like morally neutral things that lawyers still address. But it would be neat to see a much lower bar. You had another question about...
Oh yeah, should everyone always be trying to level up?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question about comparative advantage, right? To me, like that's what all of us are doing on like the career decision journey. It's just like
finding your comparative advantage. Yeah,
there's just like some place where it's best for me to be for like the whole ecosystem of folks working on cause X or Y or like whatever cause is important. And yeah, there's just like some true answer for that if we ran all the hypotheticals and whatever. And I just like, want to land there. And it's interesting. Like I've just gone through this hiring process, and it's like, I mean, you've hired people. It is just like we make them as good as we can, but they're not super predictive. And I interestingly like
hiring process.
Yeah. As the candidate in my new role, like I feel that. I was like,
you're like, are you sure you should be hiring me?
Have I given you really all the information you need? Because I'm not totally clear on what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you're like competent enough to like back me to do it and pay me all this money.
Yeah. I mean, they also want to encourage you to take the role. And so them being like, we think there's a 70% chance that you're going to do great, and a 30% chance that you're going to flame out is, maybe not the most motivating thing to say to you. Not saying that they're being dishonest. I'm just saying like, they want to give you a sense of, hey, you're going to come here. We're going to take care of you. We're going to help you thrive.
But in the comparative advantage framing, right? They had other candidates.
Yeah.
And they basically put me top.
Oh, and,
right?
Of course.
And it's like that decision.
Yeah.
I just like many ways you could have gotten that wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like, so yeah, I mean, so this is what I'm saying is like one version, one like easy cop out is to say everyone swing for the fences and leave it up to like your employer to like figure out whether you should advance to the next fence or however the metaphor works. Yeah, but I just do think that like jobs are sticky for like lots of social reasons. A person comes in, they work for you, they were the best candidate as far as you could tell when you hired them, and they do okay, and they're solid and they contribute, and you have a relationship now, and like and like, I don't know, make this all double for the nonprofit space or whatever. It's because it's not like you can just say like, hey, we're losing money on you. You knew this was the deal. It's like our objectives and goals are like much less clear. And so like people can just like get stuck in roles for which they are not the best person. And there can be just like there can be like double blindness on both sides of this exchange. And so I think like a lot of what I try to do in my advising is try to heighten the awareness about whether you're in the place you should be, or like what place you should be aiming to be given what you know about yourself.
So the thing that comes to mind for me is also the costs, though, of people switching a lot. So I feel like in the EA community, people often want to change roles, level up quite often.
Cool.
It seems ambitious. It is ambitious, and it is challenging, and it shows that you can do something new, and it's growth oriented. And I think people are obsessed with growth. Not in a bad way, in a way that I think is often great. And I noticed that it's like probably quite painful for people and orgs to have to be paying the like investment costs of like hiring rounds, like getting started, onboarding, enculturation, and so on and so forth, fairly frequently. Do you think there's like, what am I trying to say here? I think there's a way in which, I'm not sure that you sort of framed it as like the bias being on the side of the status quo, and I feel like unsure that the bias is on the side of the status quo versus the optimal. But I'm not sure.
Yeah. Something here I notice is with the the framing of once you're in the role, you might not be the best person. Like, I think that, is more true when you don't consider the switching costs to come. Like, yeah, if we could pop you out, then yeah, you weren't the best person, perhaps.
And also the search, imperfection of the search, right? There probably is somebody better for your role, but like, who are they? What are they doing? Are we going to be able to get them? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, but yeah, just the costs are substantial. So yeah, thinking of it as you might not be the best person for it, I think does ignore the costs. And yeah, there was a really good EA forum post about this like 36 hours ago.
Yeah, I saw this by Amy, right?
Yes. Yes.
The thing that was like in celebration of people doing a solid job.
Yes.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Being stable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something here around like orgs are really competitive for talent, so we have this culture where people can and thus do prioritize their own growth, even though it's costly for orgs, whereas if we had an abundance of talent, just the negotiations here would look different. Is this a thing that might be going on?
Conor is speaking to something that I've been thinking of here. Like, I don't know how costly this is. It's a real phenomenon that you're pointing to, and it does seem costly. It does seem like the fix falls largely on like 80K's shoulders, because what you'd really want to do, like
is enable growth at the org.
Yeah.
Okay.
Enable like new people who are doing what we'd say is like not very important work now to come in and start doing very important work, as opposed to this dynamic that I think you were pointing to, where like people go from like very important org X to very important org Y, and backwards and forwards into Z and A. They're all very important, and there's all these switching costs. However, if you just like brought new people in to like fill in the needs at these orgs, you'd avoid those switching costs. And I think another important thing to point to is just like, as you stay in a role longer, you build up all this institutional knowledge. And it is just a fact that we like cannot preserve or record all that when people leave. And it's like super valuable to have people who've been around for a long time and built up instincts and intuitions and memories. And I feel that is like a real cost of me leaving now. It's what like Michelle tells me. It's just like, Matt, you have all this institutional knowledge. Whenever someone has an idea, you're like, well, 2.5 years ago, it was like this or that. And so I think that's like a thing where it's like really urgent to like go and find new great people to help things drive forward. Beyond just the normal case, because also there's this like switching cost dynamic.
Right.
So you're pointing toward you'd like to put pressure on orgs to like not be trying to poach people from other orgs or something, and being more like who are already doing like great work, because that like really makes the switching cost possibly dominant in this case. But like instead being like, let's find people who are like kind of not doing things that seem that important, and like try to like bring them into the thing and then like give them great work. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and I mean,
was that what you're pointing to?
I want to put the stress more on 80K and orgs like 80K, where it's like we've got to go and find those new people and boost them and create an abundance.
Right, because
like,
it's our job.
Talented supply.
Yeah. Sorry,
putting it on orgs.
I thought you were talking about hiring orgs, like orgs hiring, but you mean 80K should like help create this tool of palette. Wow, it is the theme. Anyway, yeah, great. It makes sense.
Yeah, I don't like this idea of like, everyone should restrain themselves in different ways to like make it work for everyone else. I just like.
Sure.
Have entities and organizations and institutions that can all just like go for broke on the thing that they think is most valuable, and just like have it be that the right institutions exist such that this works out.
Right. You've been at 80K for 3 years?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you feel like you've stopped leveling up?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of this is on me. I think I've learned some big lessons here, and mostly big lessons I've learned from mistakes, and mistakes that are hard to reverse, especially on my end. And to be like less vague, I think that at some relatively early point, like got my relationship with my manager, Michelle, just like wrong. And yeah, it's mostly on me for not focusing on like the goals of the work and the space where like we can collaborate and do really productive things together, and more on just like we have a disagreement about vision, and that like upsets me and makes this work feel aversive. And look, like I do think that knowing what I know now, like if I could go back in time and like start this relationship over, like it's a weird hypothetical where it's like I have the lesson learned, but I don't remember all the details of how I learned it or something like that. Like I could just do it right and like really click with Michelle and have both of us like really driving forward on the things that we each endorse, and in a way that we endorse for each other. That is just like the right compromise of like values and perspective that like drive the one-on-one advising program forward. But like just on my end, I just feel emotionally burdened by like all the things that happened, and like it's just hard for me to click in. I mean, some days I do, some weeks I do, and I think it's like a bit telling that like I was here a year before Hewan. And Hewan's a really young dude. Well, really young by my lights. I think he's like 7 or 8 years younger than me. And he is now on like basically a leadership track, as far as I can tell. And I definitely don't feel like I'm on a leadership track. And this feels like the reason. And so now what I want to do is like take these lessons into a new context where I don't have all of like the baggage of the memories and the emotions and stuff like that, and apply them really well. And that's like going to be my opportunity to level up.
Yeah. This is just a thing that does happen, right? Like in like friendships or relationships where you goof, like there isn't a reverse time button. You do just have to like hold it and apply it elsewhere. This just seems real and true.
I mean, is it not the case that one can repair a relationship with the manager or with somebody else? I mean, this happens. Like, it is hard. Sorry, it is hard. But it's like, it feels like not worth. It seems sometimes something that people should try to do. Yeah. I guess like for our listeners, I am curious if you can say, give more advice, having learned these lessons about like, how would you advise people to relate to their managers if you have a disagreement or something? I mean, I guess you sort of said this, but I kind of want to hear it in a pithy form. Or like look at face the camera and like, because this is career advice, and like, I don't know, we do that here.
Yeah, this is it.
So the pithy version is just like realize that the keys to like realizing your vision and your success in the short run lie with your manager's success, because they're the person who's going to like vouch for you, back you to do whatever you want to do. And it's a relatively short period of time, maybe like a year and a half, where like if you just like, maybe you don't do it on the object level, but if you just like take on their vision and say like, hey, I understand your perspective and what you want to do in the world and how you see this team and this program. And like, I'm going to put myself and my own ideas aside, and I'm just going to like run forward and try to nail that as best I can. I think you learn a lot about their vision and how it works. But if you just conceive of yourself as like having this intense like service orientation for a short period, of a year or a year and a half or something like that, you do get the most done and you get the most credit, and your ability then to like raise disagreements and things like that is like greatly enhanced and multiplied.
I think this probably sounds like good advice, especially when you begin in a role as a new person at the org. I think there's like, it's different if you like get a new manager, but like you've been doing the role for like a long time. But if they basically had a vision, they hired you to execute that vision, and then they're going to want you to execute that vision probably, unless you can convince them otherwise. And it might take like a decent amount of intellectual muscle to do so that you maybe shouldn't expect to have at the beginning, especially.
Yeah, I feel like there's something here around executional roles and decision-making roles. Like I could imagine somebody in a decision-making role hire somebody in strategy, hire another strategy person, and then this like doesn't make as much sense. They are like asking you to disagree with them more and hash things out. Whereas I think this model that you've put forward fits me at 80K really well, actually, insofar as I was hired to be executional, be a software engineer. And I always joked that I was there for Kush to throw me at things. And over time, like, took on more responsibility. And at this point, I mean, we still agree about basically everything, but not actually everything. And yeah, something about, yeah, be executional, and then have like the credibility and the knowledge, what have you, to have your own ideas make sense for my case, but I think not every case.
And importantly, you own the job board now.
Exactly.
It's totally your baby.
Yes.
No one tells you what to do.
No.
I mean, we have input, but it's yours.
It's very hands-off input. Yeah.
And you started out the way that you described.
Yes.
I do want to raise one worry I have about this advice.
Please.
Love it.
Which is that, like, you become the person you act as day in and day out, right? And so if you start out saying, like, well, it's instrumentally useful for me to, like, be highly deferential to my boss and their vision, you may just end up wholesale adopting that vision for yourself in a way that you wouldn't have if you didn't come in with that mentality. And, like, it is not clear which of these is, like, going to be right.
I think it just really depends on basically, like, I think this is just like an epistemic question. Is like, how likely is it that my manager has a vision that is great? If I disagree, how much should I discount my own views based on the fact that I just started, I haven't considered all these alternatives, blah, 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 and have less experience and so on. And then something about, like, what's the difference between like our disagreement? So, like, if they think plan A is what we should do and I think plan A star is what we should do, how much is the star worth versus the strife of constantly arguing? And I think, like, sometimes even if you're right about the star, the strife can outweigh it. Like, orgs need to function, we need to have hierarchies, we need to have things that, like, whatever, we need to have a single decision maker on various things in order to, like, actually do things and move forward. Yeah, so I think that's another question. But I could easily imagine it being the case that you, like, it's not true that that the strife doesn't outweigh it, and then you want to, like, really push your vision.
I think the dream is, like, the ability to really intensely compartmentalize and be like, look, at the end of every month or every quarter or whatever, I'm going to, like, switch off my service mentality for a day, and I'm going to, like, pull up all these documents I write where, like, how would I do things ideally? And if this happens regularly enough, you can kind of, like, preserve your independence. I think this is, like, very hard to do without it, like, feeding back into your process.
I just think this is, like, weirdly uncooperative. Sorry, like, as in
even
mindset.
Even the minimal compartmentalized version of it, where you're just like, I'm going to hypothetically engage with this world where, like, I can do whatever I want for a day, a month.
Sorry, I'm not saying, what I'm saying is that I think a manager generally is trying to cultivate the growth and ideas of their report. And so it's like, there should be a kind of, like, so now here's my, like, journaling about what I think, how I would run the department if I were in charge or whatever. And like, having that be part of the relationship, I think, is, like, so much more ideal. And being able to, like, have them interrogate that and be an interlocutor and an intellectual partner in that would be the ideal case, is all I'm saying. And sort of, like, being like, now I'm, like, this person at work, and then or I'm at this person for 90% of the time at work, and for 10% of the time at work, I'm doing this other thing where I'm trying to grow, but I'm kind of, like, doing it in, like, weirdly, like, separately, seems less good.
So, completely right.
Yeah.
I'll just say that, like, I think we're mostly speaking about cases where, like, for whatever reason, you and your manager can't sync up.
Yeah.
And can't resolve the crux. Or whatever.
But it's, you don't need to resolve necessarily, right? Sometimes just arguing can be, like, good intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
And so, like, even if you don't end up in the same place, you can, like, kind of
right. Yeah. So it's not like totally solo activity. Like the ideal version of this is closer to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Where, like, your manager should know what these docs contain and what you think. Yeah. But there's, like, some point at which you need to switch this off and just do the thing that, like, either process or your manager thinks is the best thing to do, and feel good about that and feel like that's your main source of contribution. So yeah, have more discourse, have more input, though that does, like, raise the chance that this, like, bleeds into the rest of your mentality. And it's just, like, hard to control, like, your impulse towards, like, my vision, my manager's vision. And so, like, finding some way to, like, engage sincerely with your own vision and then switch off and do the thing that the process says should be done is the trick, and it just seems like a really hard trick.
I'm going to get closing thoughts from you because I want to ask you about the team retreat next.
Nice.
Okay, closing thoughts. Something. I don't know. I feel like I have a lot of feelings about this. But I have nothing else useful to say in a pithy way. So never mind. No closing thoughts.
Very good. Very good. Let's get out of these here weeds. Let's talk about our recent company retreat. We went to some cute little cottages for cumulatively 3 days, across 4 days. And we all did some bonding, some strategy. And you wanted to talk about it. So I'm wondering how you felt overall about the retreat, how you feel about retreats in general as a concept.
Retreats. You'd think I might have weird takes about this.
Or normal takes.
I think most people think they're just great.
Yeah.
It's like we get to exhale a bit. We're not just like turning out the thing we turn out every day. We get to step back and reflect and also bond and like know each other. People like those interactions. Whereas I don't know. I think the character that I like play most days is the grinder and just like come in, get the thing done, put things out, don't pamper yourself. This kind of thing. And so it's like a bit resistant to this like general positivity towards retreats that I see. But yeah, I don't know. I think the standard reasons actually do just like have a lot of value. And I think this retreat especially. I think Neil did a good job being like, hey, the thing we want to do here is generally like sync up on high level strategy. What do we think ADK is doing? And I had a lot of conversations that felt like people were making some really big updates on just like, what is the basic model of what we do? Great. And I think that is like so core to like being able to like do well here or anywhere is just to like understand the high level vision and then interpret your, ideas and plans and projects through that. And it seemed like, there was just a lot of big updates for a lot of people.
Yeah, hell yeah. Did you have any big updates? Did you feel like you needed any big updates?
This isn't going to sound so flattering for Matt. I think that I just sort of knew and other people didn't.
Nice.
Just sort of knew what the strategy is or could be. Or
yeah,
the
like historically,
that produces the strategy.
Yeah,
because we're talking about strategic changes.
Right.
That are possibly on that.
And in fact, if I wanted to criticize like the vision at the retreat, I think like the idea that's like, let's make our forward-looking strategy was actually kind of like, too specific and in the wrong direction. It should have just been like, what are we doing here? What are we good at?
Interesting.
Just like much more basic building blocks for a forward-looking strategy rather than trying to like pin down what it's going to look like.
I mean, for what it's worth, I think Neil was like, we're not like making the strategy. We're like talking about a potential sort of beta version of this strategy or something like that.
This is consistent with me feeling good about the vibe.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think it's better to describe explicitly what we do here, or is it, in terms of for demonstrating? Sorry, I have some idea that maybe like having a bunch of conversations about what our forward-looking strategy should be is actually like a great way to sort of like instill what the like meta strategy is and like what it is we do here basically in terms of like how we try to have an impact and stuff like that because I don't know, it's easier to understand things when you see the concepts in action rather than being described in a sort of like bullet point form that will like feel obvious until it gets put into action until you realize it actually has some sort of function. Sorry, this is a take I have a bit, I guess. Suddenly I have this take. I don't know if I usually have this take.
And what you're saying, it feels good to get the vibe.
I'm saying that like it feels like usually doing the work of figuring out what we should do should, like if you're doing it right, like contain a ton of information about like what the goals are, what our kinds of ways of doing things should be, that like is like more communicated in a higher fidelity or something than like a sort of straightforward description of what we do, especially since, a straightforward description of what we do. Anyway, I don't know.
Would you say you're more of a just start playing the board game and we'll figure out the rules that way kind of person?
Yeah, or you need the minimal. Okay, you need the minimal thing. Yeah. But I guess I hope that people have that. Like generally as they come in, and then it's like, you play the board game that like teaches you how to play like much more viscerally or something like that.
there was also, I saw in the show notes that you wanted to talk specifically about the game of Assassin, which multiple people participated in. What sparked this?
Well, it was just a fun thing that we did at the retreat. I don't know if listeners have played. If you haven't, the idea is that you get however many participants you have. Ideally an even number, though I'm not sure. It could be an odd number. But the idea is like you get assigned another participant to target when you're the assassin, they're your target, and an item which you will use to assassinate them. And
Give it to them.
well, and you do not actually kill your fellow participants. Instead you metaphorically kill them when you successfully hand the item to them, and they accept it. And in like warm social contexts,
Symbolic killing.
yeah, symbolic. In like presumably warm social contexts, people are often inclined to accept things, and the game just sort of alerts people to like, maybe you shouldn't accept things. Maybe you should just tell people, oh, place that down on the table before you hand it to me because I'm being distrustful. And it's a little funny, and you enjoy these kinds of things. And then, of course, given whatever item you have and whoever your target is, you can come up with various like elaborate plans to hand it to them. And then it is just like a fun / embarrassing, revealing social moment when you inform someone that you have just accepted something from me, and that means you are now killed in the game. The game proceeds by you then inherit the target of the person you killed until there are only 2 people left, and one of them hands whatever they need to the other and becomes the victor. So I don't know. It's a fun game to generate stories among a big goose of people.
Pardon?
Who won?
Jenna.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nominally Jenna, though our particular game was not allowed to run to completion.
What?
And it's Connor's fault.
And to completion.
Do you not did it? No, it didn't. Connor, I think, fairly for entertainment purposes, requested that the group be texted whenever an assassination happened. We don't say who did whom, but we just know how many have been racked up. I think we had 16 players, and basically it would be fun to get those texts. There's been one assassination. There's been 2 assassinations. There's been 6 assassinations. There's been 7. And we're like, wow, things are happening. It's fun. However, the problem is, if you know you have 16 players, and there have been 14 assassinations, the only possible target that you have left is the other living assassin. So you both know who each other are.
If you know who the deaths are.
Yeah, and you just said you don't, right?
No. There are 16 players.
Yeah.
14 players have been eliminated.
Yeah, but you don't know who.
You have a target.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're right. You're totally right.
Your target must be the only other living player. And you must therefore be their target. And so now you two just like,
Interesting.
Yeah, true.
So we decided to call it when it was only Valerie and Jenna.
Got it.
Because
oh,
so yeah, Valerie was never killed.
that's it.
And we just
Jenna.
Jenna won because she killed more people. Jenna killed 4, Valerie killed 2.
Got it.
yeah.
I didn't realize that. Well, anyway.
But anyway, it was fun times.
It was a very fun time.
I thought I had like the most embarrassing story, but I would think that or whatever.
I think you should tell it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the game starts, and my target is Jürgen, our head of ops. And I thought like, and my item was a towel, and thought, oh, this is good because in the cottage scenario that Connor laid out earlier, Jürgen and I were sharing a cottage, only the 2 of us. And I thought, towel, my cottage mate. There's a trap that I can lay for him. So anyway, we get into the night after the game has begun, and people go off to their various like social activities. And I know, okay, Jürgen is out of the cottage. He's going to come back later. All right, I'm going to leave my social activity, which is like the social games or something like that. And I go to our cottage. I go into Jürgen's room. I remove all the towels from Jürgen's room. And put them in my room.
Yeah.
And then my plan was, well, I'll get back early tonight and wake up early in the morning, and I'll just generally like have my door open and my lights on, so that when Jürgen goes to shower and realizes he doesn't have a towel, his first instinct will be to ask his roommate, like, hey, do you know if there's any towels around here or something like that?
Seems like a pretty good plan.
I hand him the towel, I win.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Or you need to actually hand the item.
Yes.
It can't just be that they have to hold a specific item. Okay.
Right. So I thought like creating a need. That's going to be good. So I actually do go into his room and I take his towels and I put them in my room.
Nice.
And then I go back to the social games.
Yeah. Feeling pretty proud of yourself.
Oh, I'm so high. I've laid the perfect trap.
Yeah.
And
So
I sit down at the table between Valerie in the kitchen in the relevant cottage. Valerie turns to me and says, hey, Matt, is there garbage back there? I was like, oh, yeah, of course. There's garbage in all these kitchens. She says, can you get this for me? And almost immediately upon laying my trap, Valerie informs me that I did indeed get that for her, and that meant that I was dead.
What was her item?
A cup.
A cup.
Yeah, terrible.
What was your feeling in the moment when you realized that you got?
I mean, just like sinking,
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah.
I'm proud of myself, though. I turned it around very quickly into being like, my mentality is now that I want to be beaten by the best. I am rooting for Valerie. I want Valerie to win. And so the very next thing I went and did after that was I unlaid my trap so Jürgen would not be suspicious of towels.
Nice. Okay, so then Valerie, she inherited your...
Yeah.
I got it. Nice. Good.
That's very good.
Play Assassin, folks.
It's good. You can experience a range of feelings.
Oh yeah, you took it rather hard when Valerie... Wait, who got you? Jenna got you.
Oh, okay. So I had gotten 2 people. Then I went and spent 2 hours looking at art with Zia and Eunice. Super lovely, super nice. I'm not thinking about Assassin at all. My target is elsewhere. Nobody's tried handing anything to me. It's just not on my mind at all. So we're all sitting around in the gardens afterwards with many more people. And Jenna says, I'm going to go get a drink. Jenna comes back and she says, this tea is so hot. This actually feels like really hot tea. And I think to myself, my hands aren't that sensitive to hot water. I better take this to protect my friend. And I grab it and I go, it's not that hot. Don't worry. And she says, I'm sorry. And there's the moment of confusion where you're like, what's not lining up here? And then falling. Horrible.
If Jenna's telling of the story is correct, I believe you said, after she said, I'm sorry, you said, no, really, it's not that hot. Don't worry.
Nice.
Yeah. I didn't really feel shame with that. It was a good kill. It's fine. I did feel shame when I killed people. When I killed Eunice, I apologized again and again. I just felt so bad.
Can you say how you killed Eunice?
Yeah. So this was, I think, half an hour after the game started. And we were doing one-on-one talks. Like, you'd pair up with somebody and discuss a topic, an assigned topic you disagreed upon. And like, you'd on particular topic, 8 people would stand in a row. So you'd pair with the person who disagreed with you most. And I tried to get kind of opposite Eunice in this way, so that we could disagree the right amount. So we pair off, and I need to give a laptop. It's not that hard. I have a laptop with me, and I decide I'm going to take notes on it. And at the end of our talk, I'm going to give it to Eunice to get her review of my notes. It's easy.
Yeah.
I jot down very rough notes and say, does this look right? Takes it. I think she said no. And I said, oh, okay. Sorry, you're dead. Yeah, you feel bad. Yeah. You
How many people did you kill?
2.
How many people? You got none. Sorry. Never mind. I forgot.
Immediately killed. You're calling to mind another interesting thing that I learned about a few people on this retreat, and it's probably true of a bunch of people in the audience and maybe a bunch of people at ADK. The thing that I like to do socially at these things is play social deception games, i.e. Avalon, Mafia, Secret Hitler. And I noticed that some people, Conor included, Michelle included, I don't know about Arden, but I presume not, they just won't play these games.
Oh, no. Yeah, I won't play these games.
Oh, really? Yeah. And is this because lying feels terrible?
It's just, I cannot think, it's just a personal hell to be in like a game where you're like fabricating a sort of story and trying to paint somebody else as a bad guy. Yeah.
Right.
Fascinating.
I kind of feel that for these sorts of social deception games, Assassin felt a little different.
I think I could enjoy Assassin.
Sure.
I don't know why. It's like more physical or something, and like drawn out, and it doesn't involve like doesn't involve like a big confabulation of.
You don't have to make arguments. You just yeah. I
You
think
don't have to make exactly like
arguments.
confabulating arguments in a way to deceive others.
the like accusatory nature
Yeah.
of the social deception game
That's big.
is
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
bad. Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of, I do enjoy like tricks with friends, you know, like we share this understanding that like it's not tease each other, but like trick each other a little.
Yeah.
That's fun. Pranks, exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's better. Big recommend. Good over multiple days. Do you feel like you learned any other life lessons from it?
From the retreat or assassin or
From Assassin?
no. No,
okay, that's fair.
I do want to like explore the social deception game thing because it's striking. It's like one of the most fun things that I do in an organized fashion. I think is play these kind of social deception games. And I agree that like when you draw the bad side, and so anyway, for anyone who doesn't know, just like the social deception games there's a majority of players who are like the good guys and a minority of the players who are the bad guys. The good guys don't know who anyone is. The bad guys know who each other are. Like vaguely in that direction. Director. And the idea is like the bad guys try to like silently coordinate in order to like sabotage the good guys in their attempt to find each other and to like cooperate on scoring points. And so what the real like meat of the game is that like people argue about who's bad and who's good based on the evidence they've seen.
Right. Like every turn somebody dies, right? In Mafia.
No.
But there's some piece of evidence that will come. Some sort of piece of hard evidence about things happening that will happen each turn.
There's basically secret votes.
Yeah.
That you get to see the outcome of the votes. And you'll know that there's at least so many bad people voting in that combination of people. And you try to like make inferences based on various voting mechanisms on who's bad. And the information is usually just like quite incomplete. And so people will be touting different kind of theories about what's logically consistent with what we've seen. And then also going on vibes. Oh, they're kind of looking shifty or like this kind of thing.
So I see why this is a fun logical puzzle.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you're a good guy, it's like quite fun, I think, to like try to be working it out and being like, but they did and then this happened and that couldn't have been blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like some of my worst experiences in life, it was a big statement. I don't know I feel like trying to hide something or pull something out, like somehow like I have like these formative childhood experiences or something and like / like teenagerhood experiences of like trying to like have some deception that's like with like it's like drawn out and then I get like caught in and then like that was like so like terrible and like my like social instincts are very strongly like just live the straight and
Right.
and they like even apply in a game context. Like it's like very
Interesting. Yeah.
or like I find it very stressful. Not that I like never lie, but I like find that kind of thing very, very stressful.
Right. And it is plenty of lying. You're lying about yourself and you're lying about others.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, it is extended. People are going to grill you about it and you have to defend your lie.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Do you find that costly at all in the game context? Yeah.
So no, it's definitely worse to be a bad player.
Sure.
I think both because
some people really enjoy it.
It is very satisfying. It is very satisfying when you win as a bad player.
Yeah.
But the experience up until you win or lose is, I think, bad for almost everyone.
I don't know. I feel like I have some friends who are like that's like the challenge is it's harder, but it's like kind of a sweet, like interesting, like it's more of a difficult puzzle.
Yeah.
Like you have to like really be keeping track of a lot of stuff. And they sort of like relish that. Anyway, go on. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess I just do think that like in this incredibly abstracted kind of thing, you can just treat it like a constrained puzzle or something like that. And then, yeah, just like the kind of like bickering kind of social dynamic is just like funny to me or something.
Sure.
Yeah, and it just feels like, look, there's literally a game board in front of us, guys. Like we have stepped away from like the realm of morality now, and we're just like playing by the rules of this game. And that just it feels like relatively easy for me to do, though. So I don't feel any moral like pressure to like be lie or accusatory when the game board is there. I mostly feel pressure in like I'm not very good at this, and I'm going to get found out and fail, and that'll be embarrassing.
Embarrassing from an intellectual perspective or something. Yeah. I'm not a good compartmentalizer. So this is maybe maybe this is part of what makes the difference. I think maybe an unusually bad compartmentalizer. Not sure.
Is this the same as being a bad decoupler?
I don't think so, but I'm never like totally sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Time to admit it. What does decoupling mean when people say high decoupling? What are they saying?
I am shocked that you don't know this.
I mean, like, I feel like I know the results of being high decoupling. I know what they're talking I know what it leads to. No.
It leads to
Sorry.
a dark road that I don't want to go down.
Sorry, or yeah, look, I know its place in the like social conversation.
Yeah.
The function. This
It makes you rattier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have some of my best friends are rats.
Some of my best friends can decouple.
Some of my best friends like playing Avalon.
Right.
But like you're like decoupling what from what? Like what is it like separating out the consequence? What is it separating out?
I think like the premise is anything, like, but usually it means trying to separate out like the consequences of something being true from whether it is true.
I see. Yeah. Oh no, I think I'm high on that.
Okay,
Yeah. And yeah, I think the way it's often hardest for people is when there's a moral dimension.
Yes.
To like, you don't want to admit that like this true thing has implications that are hurtful or harmful or offensive, or things like that. And yeah, decoupling just means like you can just like your belief to the truth of a statement can just be totally separated from what you think its moral implications are.
I feel like if you are like a philosophy student or have philosophy in your background, then you're probably going to be high decoupling because it's like it's basically thought experiments are like basically about decoupling different things.
Exactly.
Well, hang on. This is something you might be able to speak to. My experience of studying philosophy in undergrad was that there is just this like very strong division between like analytic philosophy and continental philosophy, where in my parlance, the continental philosophy is known as woo.
It's not woo.
Only the best parts are woo.
The stuff that survives into the contemporary culture is woo.
Yeah.
No, I actually don't know if I believe that.
And importantly for this setup, I'll just say that in the parlance, the opposite of being high decoupling is being high contextualizing. That is to say that things are deeply intertwined with each other, and you should never. And it is actually just bad practice to unintertwine them.
Right. You will miss something important.
Yeah. And I feel like continental is things are deeply intertwined and contextualized, whereas analytic is like, no, we decouple. Does that track for you? Is this like a real thing?
It feels like there's like some like resemblance to a distinction there that I would recognize.
And yeah, are there like other people who've done like philosophy PhDs, maybe in your program, maybe not, or whatever, who just like lean very heavily on this thing that is maybe not decoupling, and they might be worse decouplers?
I don't feel like I know, and I actually didn't like the what I take to be the emotional profile of the decoupler versus not decoupler doesn't actually map on to the people who studied analytic versus continental philosophy in my experience. That said, I do think analytic philosophy encourages, it's just very about, I mean, literally it's sort of in the name. It's really about like pulling things apart and like examining them separately. And so I think it does encourage that, but yeah, I don't actually. For some reason, this doesn't feel like it empirically matches my memory of the people that I knew.
Cool.
True. How did we get on the topic of decoupling?
I asked what it meant. Oh, we talked about social deception games. I'm not a good compartmentalizer, but I probably am a high decoupler in some sense. So I guess that means those are different.
True.
Maybe in me.
I do think that all of the set of social deception games are really good insofar as they push for and require good theory of mind. And I think that does make the best kind of game. The like you do need to be able to model other people quite well in order to succeed. And I think that's so cool. Modeling people in games, that's really neat because they're modeling you at the same time. And it goes back and forth. And I just think that creates the most dynamic, interesting games. That's my pitch. Let me take a little look at
your load?
yeah.
It's spreading.
Yeah.
Can I pick up on one? Can I ask a random question that picks up on something Matt said earlier?
Of course.
Matt said the character that I usually play is not into something. What was it that you're not into? Oh yeah, retreats. The character. Sorry, not you, but the character. I was wondering if you could tell me more about that character, and then I also want to know about the character that Connor plays.
Yeah, let's talk.
Oh yeah, the character that Connor plays is fascinating. But the character that I play is probably most of the Matt that you know.
Yeah.
Because like I think it is like work Matt or like 80K work Matt. Yeah.
I guess I'm also interested in hearing about like, what are the parts of that most feel like a character? So talk about the character for the audience. I mean, I know the character, but like, and then how is it different from the Matt that is more, let's say, continuous with future Matt?
Sure.
And past Matt.
Yeah. So work Matt is basically a curmudgeon. Just like nothing is ever good enough. Everything is broken. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
These plans are all bad and going to fail in all these kinds of ways. And we should just like admit that what we don't know and like greatly simplify. Yeah, it's just the general vibe of like, it's a large part contrarianism, but then a lot of like skepticism about
pessimism as well.
how good we are at what we do. Yeah.
We just said these plans are going to fail.
Yeah. It's just like, I think it's mostly just like work Matt like perceives like part of 80K culture, which is that like it's very appreciation oriented. It's very like celebrating success oriented. It's very like positive.
The worst.
This is so interesting because I just feel like I experienced it as so critical. And like the appreciation is all about like trying to like make up for that. Like we're all like it's like you kind of, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like different roles, different people, maybe like, but I come from analytic philosophy, which is also very critical, but like, you know, my experience of it is very like, nothing is ever good enough. Things are like, the task that we're doing is impossible and we're trying our best to do it and we're like finite, but like also we have to feel bad about our finiteness and like everything is like quite like, and it's very critical. And like all of this appreciation and celebration is about trying to have that not be the fully dominant thing that is always, that wears people down.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think the hope of, you know, I did call him curmudgeon Matt or whatever, is that we can just decouple these things. We can just decouple the fact that our task is impossible and we're never doing as good as we want to be with our ability to come in every day and feel good about what we're doing and endorse it. And I think the pushback, the like, we're too critical and therefore we need all this appreciation and celebration, that just seems so fake and inauthentic to me that like actually makes me angrier.
Okay, so I disagree. I don't think it's inauthentic at all. Yeah. So I think like you can be critical and be like, okay, here, this argument has like 75 problems and like find that it is actually like really important to be able to point those out and to try to like hold ourselves to high standards. And then also be like, but you know what? I realize that like actually very few people in the world could even create an article with only 75 problems. And I want to like really appreciate that. And the fact that you like, and like the fact that you're like showing up and doing this thing, working hard, working like more than 40 hours a week often, like people really like putting in a lot. And like the sort of appreciation is to be like, and that it's difficult and you're like appreciating your colleagues for like doing things that are hard, for like trying really hard, even if you also want to be critical of the like outputs. That doesn't feel inauthentic to me at all or in any tension. It feels like it's just managing the emotional fallout of high standards.
Yeah, I feel this. And maybe there's a crux here around like how much we appreciate the process, like, and like want to appreciate the work people put in. Like in this framing, it's kind of people are working very hard, and so we're going to appreciate them for it, even if the outcomes aren't always.
And they're doing a really good job in the sense of like for a human.
Yes, yeah. We push ourselves hard, often much harder than I see in other places. So is the crux here something like, is the crux here more you wish people would work harder, or you wish people would work smarter? Or does that not tap into this?
Yeah, I guess I have this perception that like the push to celebrate and appreciate, like does blind people a little bit to like all the ways they could be doing the thing better. Yeah, and I'm really just worried about that blindness or just like creating perceptions, because a lot of it is like look, I have no problem, and I think I've done this with you, Conor, and maybe I haven't had the opportunity with you, Arden. When I like feel the impulse and the urge, and I reflect and recognize the stuff that you guys have done, I just like actually do think you guys are great and incredibly on it and fascinating people who are aiming at the right things. And like when I feel that, I should tell you. However, we have these meetings where it's like, appreciation section time, come up with something, say something nice about somebody. And this is just like, I think it almost officially says like our cultural value is to think we're great. And
no, like, appreciation is different than thinking thinking you're great. Yeah, appreciation is different than thinking you're great, I think. It's like it's appreciating the great things, which do not need to be an overall assessment. And I think you could even say this program is underperforming, or even this person is underperforming, but I appreciate the things about them or about it. Like you can, these are compatible.
I do think like I would be more sympathetic to your view if our appreciation sections and meetings were like, I appreciate this person, they're great. But often they're very narrow in scope. I thought they did really great work here, which I think is more genuine.
Or they saved my ass in like blah, blah, blah way or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, look, we are smart and creative people. I do not doubt that when prompted to find something that we can appreciate about someone, we can find something specific. But like that to me just doesn't feel very different than the you're great thing.
Okay, what do you do? What do you do about the fact that like, in fact, empirically, it seems like people really do better, perform better when they feel appreciated, when they know also like the fact that people are generating these things show that they're paying attention, and people like to feel like other people are paying attention to what I do. I'm not just like toiling away here, like blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So Arden, I think you've arrived at the crux of the problem.
Okay.
This is a Matt psychology thing.
Do you? Right. Is that usually the crux of the problems in your experience?
Well, I guess we're 2 for 2 on this recording so far. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
We had a team dinner where we went to Caravan in North London and we ate outside. And we got up from the dinner.
Oh, Caravan.
And I don't know, we were like figuring out where we were going or something like that. And you had some impulse to be like, I had grown a beard at the time. And you're like, hey, Matt, by the way, I like the beard, because I hadn't had a beard in a while or something like that. And I accused you of like, oh, you just like beards because your current partner has a beard or something, you weirdo. Like, I don't know. I don't think I called you a weirdo, but I was just like, there's no way that this can be genuine. This is like...
Wait, that would be a genuine thing. I like, in your story, I like beards.
Oh, okay, sorry. I appreciate it's spontaneous.
Sorry, yeah.
And you were not at all required to like do this, and you came up with something and something. But no, remember, the crux is my psychology. Right. And my psychology is compliments are fake. People don't mean them. Strong.
Horrible.
It's just really sad. I just think that's really not true.
I agree. Okay. But I feel it and I suspect it, and I don't know where to draw the lines, and I suspect other people are drawing the lines in the wrong places.
Interesting. You think other people should be more suspicious of compliments? Especially
in the context that we do them, guys. We're smart people. We can remember things and come up with them when prompted.
That doesn't make it less genuine.
I think it does.
I'm sorry. It makes it. It means that. Well, here's what it means. So if something is totally spontaneous and unprompted, then it does mean that it was so psychologically powerful that it kind of like invaded your brain, and then you were like, now I like must speak it. And so it does speak to, it says something. I agree with that. Yeah. But it does not make the other thing not real. Yeah. So I think that's, and I feel like it's worth bringing out that other thing.
Yeah, no, so actually episode 1, Hannah brought up the compliment deficit.
Yeah.
And I think this like speaks to
and
that.
You were like, there's a compliment glut. There's a compliment surfeit that you're talking about.
I did not push back on the point. It seems, as she presented it then and as you present it now, like very reasonable and probably correct. But there's something in me that resists it.
I know.
Do you, when you see our narrow appreciations, you just feel like you don't agree with them as well? You're like, that's not worth appreciating.
I just take the manufacturedness of them as just like an incredibly steep discount to like their value. And other people don't, and I feel like you're all just deliberately pulling the wool over each other's eyes.
I don't, it just seems, yeah. Okay.
I I feel this a little, actually, just thinking about, I think I discount very slightly, like, some people's compliments. I'm like, you're a very, very, very complimentary person, so I'm going to discount it a little. But still, I'm like, but you feel this. This is a true thing. Right, yeah. Matt, stop.
So I discount. I think I discount a lot. Let's say I actually inflate some people's.
Yeah.
Right. So just the other day, I don't know. Ben Todd left a comment on a doc of mine. They said, "I think this is probably a reasonable idea," or something like that. And yeah, I sent it to a friend.
Yeah.
This is exactly where I wanted to go.
So yeah, I mean, sorry. Yeah, please.
Father love versus mother love.
I didn't know you wanted to go there, Matt.
Take us there, Matt.
Go all the way.
Right? Father love is approval love, i.e., there are things that I want you to do and achieve, and when you do and achieve them, I will acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Mother love is unconditional. Just like, I always love you no matter what. I will find the good in you. I will see the good in you. This does track right and left a little bit, I think, as well, which maybe me as like the most conservative member of like 80K is like surprising. I have this like father love thing. Because yeah, I think I want my compliments to be like Ben Todd compliments, where it's like, after like many, many years of me never saying anything good about what you do, when you actually do something that is really, really good and it comes out of me, that's going to mean so much more to you.
Here's what I'm going to say. People should actually genuinely notice and appreciate the talents of others. And I think that the amount that is warranted for doing that for people, like the people who work at 80K and a lot of our advisees and a lot of people that we interact with, is actually enough to produce quite a lot of verbalizations of this. And that I think people who give an appreciation or compliment once every 6 months are actually underappreciating from a like truth tracking perspective, because they have not inaccurate pictures of what is either doable, possible, or ideal. And I think that, yeah, it's not good.
My take is like, people have different perceptions of this. So like my claim about me was that like I actively dislike the compliment culture. Like I think they're literally true as stated, that this is a good, positive thing that person X did. It can be me, right? And that is true, that I deserve some credit for like producing the good outcome in the world or something. But when you verbalize it, I just feel like your standards are too low.
Because we're also simply be expecting excellence of one another, and it should be unremarkable.
Right. And I will say that empirically, I think you're right. Like most people just don't operate the way that I operate. I do think there's maybe some value in having a diversity of like compliment givers. So there are some people who are very consistent and very reliable. They will let you know and make sure you're aware when you've done a good thing. And then other people who will like kind of credibly, emotionally, socially signal to you that like, wait, this thing you've done here, really insightful, really good, really valuable.
A pyramid of compliments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's useful. I mean, I do think that naturally happens. Like people just are on a spectrum of how complimenty they are.
I think it's not just about epistemic calibration and about like specific, like how good was this project. I think it's about a feeling of being on a team, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think the team thing is huge. And I wonder, like, what do you make of this conversation that we're having right now? Where I'm like, I have this view, this is how I feel. Am I being vulnerable? Are we a team right now? And it's like clear where I'm coming from, and that I think good things are happening, and that I like do appreciate them. It's just like it's hard to express, and it's important for us to sync up on.
Yeah, there's something here. Yeah,
I do appreciate the vulnerability.
This is what I want the relationship to be, just like incredibly close and free flowing between people who work closely together, and that's like how I hope that my relationships are at Law AI.
I am imagining that this first report of yours is like a little Matt, and just to delight me, like you come away from this conversation and you're a little bit adjusted to us, and you're like, you know what, maybe I should push myself to be a bit more complimentary. And then he hires the most cold, grumpy, like 22-year-old. That'd make me so happy.
I mean, I was hoping for that already.
You're hoping for that.
But yeah, I agree in the movement, and just like, I don't know, somehow getting clarity on what this is and what form feedback should take.
Yeah. It is probably just worth being bespoke with the person as well.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the character that Connor plays?
Yeah.
And then I don't know how much time we have.
We are at a clean 12:13. So we could do my character quickly, and then your character quickly. There's no escape.
Connor, your character?
I'm me.
You're Ned Flanders. We had a whole episode about this.
Yeah. I thought about that after the fact. Yeah, I think that's somewhat true. I do think there's an element where like there's something to the fact that most of the art I enjoy and like music, etc., is actually quite sad. Like I'm not like purely like cartoonishly silly and happy. I want to make a claim that I'm a more complex human. But I guess the character is like extremely bubbly, to the point where people have to ask, "Is this for real?"
Interesting.
That is the character. Yeah.
People ask, "Is this for real?"
One of the people on this couch has done exactly this with Connor.
and remember in our discussion the other night with Sudhanshu and Nick, Sudhanshu said, "Is this a facade?" I was like,
yeah.
"It's not a facade.
Yeah, right.
I'm telling you."
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my character. What else is there to say?
Do you feel that you chose that character at some point at all? I mean, even if it's not a facade, one can sort of like maybe lean into and cultivate.
1,000,000,000,000%. Yeah, I mean, in the way that anybody aspires to be a thing. You're like, oh, I want to be a friendlier, more caring, more thoughtful person. And then over time, you just do through lots of teeny little efforts and little rewirings. Because I used to be a much more grumpy person. Yeah.
Look, Matt.
Oh.
There's hope for you.
Well, I was discontented in my grumpiness, whereas you're more set.
I mean, it's mixed.
Yeah.
And I do admire Connor Barnes
Thank
quite
you.
a lot, especially the persona and what people perceive as a character, but does seem
Very nice.
close to the genuine article.
I mean, yeah, I am kind of opposed to the concept of authenticity with people. Like, you just are what you do. Like, there's no like unmasked yada yada.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Okay, what about your character?
So I don't experience myself as having as much of a character as I feel like you two do. I might have less of a character. So, sorry, first of all, little aside. I feel like I'm a bit surprised. This is a very like silly thought probably, but like I feel like I'm a bit surprised at how much of characters people in real life are.
Yeah.
People are like such personalities. It's just sort of I sort of expect everyone to be much more I don't know, similar to one another, or like normal or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, especially in our world, with a lot of personality.
Yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah, but yeah. Is that more true? Yeah, maybe it is more true.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay, so I don't experience. I don't have like a ready-made answer like the way you guys do. I assume there is some sort of like. I definitely am doing a thing when I come into the office, or even when I sort of like come into the sort of public world. But I wouldn't know how to describe the character. I guess like I'm trying to lean into certain traits.
Yeah.
Maybe like trying to be thoughtful, trying to be like defender of subtlety often, or something like that. Maybe like try to reliable, maybe, or responsible, or something like that. I think this is maybe virtues. There's virtues I try to cultivate and try to lean into, but I don't feel like it doesn't feel like it's a.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the same thing of like, there's an aspirational version of you that you lean into when you have the opportunity. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Matt's is not an aspirational version necessarily, right? Is the curmudgeon a aspirational Matt, or is it just a Matt that you sort of think it's kind of good to be, but it's not like the person you want to be with your whole self?
I think it's mostly a reaction to my environment, and probably, like, as we discussed, a relatively bad one. Yeah. And it's interesting how I contrast it with other environments. I guess here I feel like I have a relatively good sense of what ADK is trying to do and what I'm trying to do compared to other folks at ADK, which, like, could be right or wrong. I don't know. But it's like the feeling that I have. It's like I get what we're doing. And other people think we're doing, like, some slightly different thing. And, like, famously what we're doing is really hard and complex. And so, like, people have different views on it. And I think some of the views are bad or whatever. And so I feel like I need to set these people straight. They're wrong. And they're all happy they're wrong.
The worst.
Yeah, interesting.
And so I'm reacting to that environment. Law firm, very different. As I said, 200-year legal tradition. Partners and other associates at my firm doing it for decades, got better grades than me, really know what they're doing. Much humbler, Matt. Yeah, so I think it's a reaction to my environment, and, like, whether I'm right about, like, the empirical premises of these reactions, like, is unclear.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for finding the environment where you can, be the best you. And, like, maybe that sounds, like, trite and obvious, but, like, then in practice, sometimes you do find people who change environments and they're like, oh yeah, I should have done this, like, hundreds of years ago. And so I'm stoked to see what happens.
And perhaps Law AI is just the perfect middle point between these two.
Yeah.
I'm humble on the legal side. I'm, like, really confident on the impact side. And then maybe this, like, ends up in a good place, but I'm going to try to be more aware of it. But yeah, Arden, you seem, because we are talking about you.
Yeah.
Like, is it, like, pragmatism and problem solving? Is Arden, like, I feel like you walk in the store and you're like, look, there are all these complicated topics and pressing deadlines and reasons we got to pursue things, and we just got to, like, look people in the eye and get them to feel good about the compromises we make here. And so let's find the right compromises, and I'm just, like, very open to whatever they ought to be. That's how I perceive you.
Interesting. I am somebody who often finds myself in the middle. So there's probably some truth to that, but I don't like usually like going for compromises. I often find myself being somebody who's, like, defending some of the, like, more kind of, like, hardline ADK stuff in strategy conversations about, like, I find myself, like, defending going for the, like, long-term impact, for, like, the prioritizing, for, like, the like, kind of, like, thinking of things as comparable, things like that.
Yeah.
So that feels like a little anti that, but, like, at the same time, I do think pragmatism,
pragmatism and problem solving more than compromise.
Yeah.
Just saying, like, you have many stakeholders at the table, and, like, you need to agree on a plan. And
that's true. I am very into, like,
collaboration.
Yeah.
Like, I do feel like I want to say often, like, all right, guys, here's the thing, blah, 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 blah. Or, like, some, like, yeah, you can, to, like, can we, like, like, boil it down to, like, what we're going to do. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so I like that. Yeah. Yeah, this sounds good.
I feel like I associate you with the sentence, let's figure this out.
Great. Yeah. That sounds good. That sounds good. Exactly. This reminds me of just like random, but one of the best pieces of feedback I think I've gotten is from Cody, who said, so this thing about being in the middle. He once was like, probably the, like, best thing to do isn't like, won't happen to be, like, sort of between, like, salient positions. It seems like you end up there, like, suspiciously often. Or something. And I thought that was really good. And I, like, think about that a lot.
Right. Like, you've seen the joke about how there are centrists who are, like, really concentrated in their middling beliefs. And then there are centrists who are happy to average out between extreme beliefs.
This is a great visual meme. So the like 2-dimensional political axis chart that gives you 4 quadrants that you can fall into. And so it's like there are 2 kinds of centrist. And like little dots on the chart are, like, policy positions or whatever. And there's one kind of centrist where all the dots are clustered right in the middle of the chart. There's another kind of centrist where just a circle of dots going around the chart.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, right. So the first is a principled centrist. The second is a centrist of sort of, like,
has independently formed views on all these different things that happen to average out to the middle.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I do think the latter kind is cooler.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. I think the joke term is a radical centrist.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I was misunderstanding the thing before. Yeah, interesting. So maybe my persona, my character, is like pragmatist a bit, but maybe like its faults come from being maybe like sometimes a bit of a centrist in a maybe a bad way. Right. I don't know, or that's like some of the downside. Not sure.
I think you're just a good philosopher.
Oh, what does that have to do with anything?
Like, just think through all the reasons and contingencies of all the things and be very clear about defining them and whatnot, and make that clear for everyone at the table who needs to make a decision. Cruxy, decision relevant stuff. Good.
Thanks.
You went through all this stuff about how you hate compliments.
I was just saying, this is getting a little sappy.
Yeah,
it's cringe.
Stop.
Like, God.
I think we should wrap because we're over time and over budget. God.
Connor's hourly rate.
Hey. Is there any wrapping up things we should discuss? I guess particularly with you leaving.
Yeah.
Or this is, I guess, your opportunity to have a public send-off monologue about your time at ADK.
Dear friends, 1 year ago at our team retreat in 2023, the germ of an idea was birthed to have very low stakes freewheeling podcast to complement what Wiblin does. I think in a very low stakes way, we have met the vision, and I hope that it will be carried on by others, and that this will not be the last you hear from me.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew.
Wow. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Cut. That is the great note to end on. Cool. Unless there's anything else you do want us to talk about, then we can just cut it back in.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss this place and a lot of these people. At least on the everyday basis, we're still gonna work together. I'm gonna miss London a lot.
Wow.
One thing people probably don't know about me is that I'm incredibly sentimental.
We didn't talk about how you're going to Korea to meet a girl.
It might have been the main thing I wanted.
And marry her, maybe.
Yeah, the reason I'm going to Korea is to get back together with my ex, and the idea is to get married.
Wild.
Yeah, in part because we just did build a bunch of memories together, very London-centric memories. And yeah, she's also just like, interestingly, given our last conversation, given me like the most unconditional love of anyone. Everyone else felt like they wanted a lot of things, to do specific things, to be specific kinds of people, to live specific kinds of lives. And, you know, Taryn, for whatever reason, just like, it's like, no, I just love Matt. And whatever Matt wants to do, I'm down and I'm happy and I'm positive and we can make it happen. And I felt like I really failed to appreciate that. And I want to work on actively appreciating that and not taking it for granted. So that's what Korea is about. It's trading one sentimentality for another one, but I think the more important one.
Wow. It's a pretty precious thing.
That's lovely. Good luck.